We're a month away from kickoff of the NFL season and fantasy football drafts are heating up, so I'm here to help you out by giving you some of my favorite fantasy football defenses to draft based on their early season schedules. My top pick is also a pretty obvious one. It's the Denver Broncos. The Broncos finished as the top-ranked defense in fantasy last year, averaging 10.5 fantasy points per game. That's essentially what DK Metcalf put up in half-point PPR leagues. I also like the Denver Broncos because their schedule, the first 2 weeks, they get the Titans and the Colts, which are two teams that are going to be quarterbacked by inexperienced or inconsistent quarterbacks, and I think we'll have fairly average offenses on the year. However, I don't like to be the first person in my league to draft defenses. We have enough statistical evidence over the years that has proven that reaching to draft one of the top 3 or 4 defenses off the board doesn't actually give you a meaningful chance to get one of the top defenses at the end of the year. And so I won't be reaching to draft a defense, which means it's highly unlikely that I get the Denver Broncos in my drafts, despite the fact that I am really interested in their early season schedule. Another highly ranked defense with a strong early season schedule is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last year, the Steelers finished as the 4th ranked defense in football, averaging 8.6 fantasy points per game. I also really like the early schedule for the Steelers. They're going to start off against the Jets offense that, yes, has some talented pieces, but Justin Fields under center, while he can be an explosive playmaker, also has a history with turnovers, and he's going to be throwing to an offense, a stable of pass catchers that really has nobody outside of Garrett Wilson. After that, the Steelers get a matchup against the Seattle Seahawks offense that has the 30th ranked offensive line according to Pro Football Focus, and then a Patriots team that has the 29th ranked offensive line according to Pro Football Focus. I really think the pressure on the quarterback is one of the key aspects to fantasy defense production. That's not a surprise to you because obviously it leads to sacks. However, in addition to sacks, putting pressure on the quarterback leads to poor decisions, leads to turnovers, and so the Steelers matchups against offensive lines that I think they could take advantage of are going to put up a lot of fantasy points for them. However, they are also likely to be one of the top defenses off the board, so it's unlikely that I'll get the Steelers in my drafts. However, if they fell to me, I would be super excited to click on them. A more realistic defense for me to draft is the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals were ranked 18th in fantasy points per game last year. However, I do really think they have some talent on this defense. They also added first-round pick Walter Nolan, second-round pick Will Johnson, and they will get last year's first-round pick Darius Robinson back. He only played in 6 games last season, so there's a lot of young talent that I think will make this Cardinals defense better than the version we saw last year. However, they also start off the season with a tremendous matchup against a Saints offense that I think will be one of the worst in the league this year. The Saints are either going to start rookie Tyler Shuck at quarterback or Spencer Rattler. Whoever it is, I think that's a matchup that we are going to want to attack with our fantasy defenses. And then after that, the Cardinals get the Carolina Panthers. And I know Bryce Young looked better when he was reinserted into the starting lineup in the second half of the season, but I think that Bryce Young is maybe just an average NFL quarterback. The Panthers' offensive line is slightly above average, and they're relying on a lot of young playmakers in the wide receiver core. And so early on in the season, we don't know if those guys are going to click yet. And so this is an offense I also think that we should be able to take advantage of. So if you get one of the later picks in your draft where you're taking a defense, I think the Arizona Cardinals are a really good gamble because of those first 2 games. Another defensive option I like in drafts is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams finished as the 13th ranked defense last year, but they have a lot of talent on the defensive line with Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, and Braden Fisk. And that's a big component of fantasy success is the pressure that you can get on quarterbacks. And the defensive line will go up against the Houston Texans offensive line that Pro Football Focus ranks as the worst offensive line in football. So that's a matchup that really favors the Rams. And I know you're going to say the Texans have a lot of talent on offense. Should we really be attacking them with a defense in week 1? And I do like C.J. Stroud and I do like Nico Collins, but beyond that, Joe Mixon right now is dealing with a foot injury. We don't know if he's going to play in week 1. We don't know what we're going to get from this version of Nick Chubb. Christian Kirk is somebody who has been explosive in the past, but we don't really know what kind of production we're going to get from him. So there are a lot of question marks with the Houston Texans skill position players behind an offensive line that we know should be pretty bad. And so I think that matchup favors the Rams, and I think the Rams are just a talented offense overall. So I do really like taking the Rams early, and then I can keep them on my roster because they get the Titans in week number 2 and rookie quarterback Cam Ward, and I think that's going to be a matchup we want the Rams for as well. A final late defensive option in drafts is the New England Patriots. Back in the Bill Belichick years, we expected the Patriots to be a top-performing defense in fantasy year in and year out. However, last year they finished 31st in fantasy points scored per game. They now have Mike Vrabel leading things, and I think that is going to help to kind of kickstart this defense a little bit. There are some talented pieces, guys that they missed from injury, guys that they're bringing in the offseason, and so I think that this unit overall will be better coached and have a lot more talent on it. However, the reason that I like targeting them in drafts is because they get the Las Vegas Raiders in Week 1. Outside of Geno Smith and Ashton Genty, I don't really think that there's a lot of talent with this Raiders offense. Yes, Jacoby Myers is fine, and we know Brock Bowers is very good, but I just think overall the offense leaves a lot to be desired. They have a slightly above average, kind of just a league average offensive line, and so I think this matchup, if you've waited to draft a defense, if you've got kind of the last choice, I think the Patriots are a decent gamble because I do like this matchup for them, and so I think that they're a team that I'll be rolling the dice on, in particular in deeper formats. That's going to do it for this video. I'm going to be back every week during the NFL season giving you my picks of defenses that I'm targeting and defenses I'm fading for each week of the fantasy football season. So make sure you click below to like and subscribe to get all of those videos plus all of our football content and fantasy football content over at NBC Sports.